The sky above Earth was still when the first ships arrived. For years, humanity had braced itself for the unknown, preparing defenses, alliances, and treaties with neighboring planets. Yet nothing could have prepared them for the sudden, ruthless onslaught of the Exotheri. The Exotheri fleet descended without warning, a storm of black ships that blotted out the sun. They were faster, stronger, and far more advanced than anything Earth had ever seen. Massive warships, shaped like dark, jagged spires, arrived first, bombarding Earth's defenses with precision strikes. Cities burned, military bases disintegrated under the weight of alien weaponry. The Exotheri didn't waste time. Their goal was simple: annihilate and subjugate. On the ground, chaos reigned. The world's communication systems failed as cities were torn apart. Governments fell in a matter of hours, unable to respond to the overwhelming strength of the invaders. In less than a day, Earth's defenses were shattered, and hope seemed lost. In the heart of what remained of the UEF, United Earth Federation, a group of soldiers, many from the elite divisions, fought back. Among them was Captain James Halston, a battle-hardened leader with a reputation for never retreating. But even he, in the face of the overwhelming firepower of the Exotheri, could see the grim truth. Their fleet was unmatchable. His soldiers, outgunned and outclassed, were being slaughtered. Still, they fought. The UEF's highest command had ordered the evacuation of critical leaders and military assets, but Halston refused to leave the battlefield. He knew Earth's military might, once a symbol of power, was now nothing but a relic in the face of this new alien menace. Yet he held firm. There had to be something they could do. "Sir," one of his officers, Surgeon Eli Vasquez, yelled over the comm. "We're losing the Western Front. The 51st is holding on, but they need backup." Halston took a moment, his mind racing through the possibilities. Every mission had gone awry. Every plan had crumbled beneath the might of the Exotheri. But there was one thing they had left: their spirit. Humanity had always fought back against impossible odds. "We're not backing down. We fight on our terms," Halston growled, determination hardening his voice. He turned to the rest of his team. "Get the Crimson Resolve operational. It's time to make them regret underestimating us." The Crimson Resolve, an elite, clandestine force within the UEF, had been designed for scenarios just like this, when the fight seemed lost, when humanity was on the brink. Halston had led them in the past, but this would be their most important mission. If Earth had any hope of surviving, it would be through these soldiers. On the ground, his team moved with deadly precision, hitting Exotheri supply lines and striking at vulnerable command posts. Each success was a victory, but it was becoming clear: the Exotheri were not just invaders, they were conquerors, and they were prepared to burn everything to the ground to achieve their goals. Meanwhile, the skies above Earth were filled with the haunting sound of alien ships. The largest of them, a massive flagship called the Zirathar, hovered just above the atmosphere, its shadow casting a dark pall over the planet. Its weapons were positioned to obliterate entire continents with a single blast. No one knew how long Earth had, but it wouldn't be long before they became a footnote in the galaxy's history. Yet, despite the overwhelming power of the Exotheri, the fire of resistance burned brightly within humanity. In the darkest hour, Earth's soldiers, those left standing, gathered under the banner of the Crimson Resolve, refusing to surrender. And so began the war for Earth's survival, a war that no one, not even the Exotheri, would forget. In the weeks following the initial invasion, Earth's military resistance began to adapt. The Crimson Resolve, now fully operational and fiercely committed to its mission, turned to guerrilla tactics. Every soldier knew that the key to surviving this war was not overwhelming force, but cunning, resourcefulness, and an unwavering will to fight. Humanity's strength wasn't in its weaponry, it was in its tenacity. Captain Halston, leading the charge from the front lines, had a plan. The Exotheri may have superior technology, but their reliance on brute force had its weaknesses. The Crimson Resolve operated in the shadows, small, surgical strikes designed to cripple the Exotheri's supply chains, communication systems, and morale. They hit hard, then disappeared into the urban landscape or deep into the forests and mountains, where the alien invaders couldn't track them. The human resistance wasn't winning the war, not yet, but they were forcing the Exotheri to think. Every victory, no matter how small, was a blow to the enemy's perception of invincibility. One such mission took place in the ruins of Paris, where the remnants of a once proud military base had been overrun. A critical Exotheri communication relay was located deep within the city, a vital piece of infrastructure, allowing the invaders to coordinate their operations across the globe. Halston and his team, including Sergeant Vasquez and Lieutenant Leo Clark, were tasked with disabling it. It was a mission rife with danger. Exotheri patrols roamed the ruins, and the alien forces had set up makeshift bases amidst the devastation. "We get in, plant the explosives, and get out," Halston ordered, his voice calm but edged with urgency. "Keep your heads down. We can't afford any mistakes." The team moved quickly, using the city's shattered skyline for cover. Leo, the team's expert in electronics, quickly hacked into the relay's central system, his fingers flying over the keys of a makeshift console as Vasquez provided cover. For a few moments, everything seemed to go as planned. The Exotheri were distracted by a secondary assault launched by the Crimson Resolve elsewhere, giving the team the opening they needed. Then came the explosion. A sudden, deafening blast rang out, far too close for comfort. The team looked up in shock as a column of fire erupted from a nearby building. The Exotheri had detected them somehow, despite their best efforts to stay hidden. "We're compromised," Leo shouted. "They've activated an alarm." The streets erupted with the sound of alien weapons. Halston barked orders, pulling his team into an alley, but it was clear the ambush was already in full motion. The Exotheri, far more advanced and better equipped, descended upon the human soldiers in droves. A firefight ensued, fierce and chaotic. For a few moments, the Crimson Resolve held their ground, but they were outgunned. Halston's heart raced as he ordered a retreat. As they pulled back through the ruins of Paris, Halston's mind raced. This mission was supposed to be a small but vital victory, but now they were running for their lives, leaving behind their comrades and valuable intel. Something didn't feel right. It wasn't until they were back at their makeshift base that the truth came crashing down. The mole within their ranks, the one they had suspected for weeks, had struck. "We need to talk," Vasquez said, her voice low, filled with distrust. Halston didn't need to ask who she meant. They had been working under the assumption that someone in their inner circle had been leaking information to the enemy. But the raid on Paris had been more than just a failed mission, it had been an execution. It was Leo. The team confronted him, but the man they had trusted stood cold, unflinching. "You didn't think it was going to end well, did you?" Leo sneered, the glint of betrayal in his eyes. "I've been feeding them everything, every movement, every attack. It's only a matter of time before your little resistance burns." "Why?" Halston demanded, fists clenched in anger. "We gave you everything." Leo's laugh was hollow. "Because they promised me power, something your ragtag band of rebels could never give me. When the Exotheri win, Earth will be theirs, and I'll be there to help them rule." The rest of the team stood in stunned silence, unable to process the betrayal. Vasquez was the first to act, her face a mask of fury as she drew her sidearm. Halston, however, stopped her with a hand on her shoulder. "No," he said, his voice cold. "We'll deal with him later. For now, we move. We've lost the relay, but we haven't lost the war. We fight on." Leva was taken into custody, but the damage had already been done. Not only had they lost vital intel, but they now knew that Exotheri had someone on the inside. The resistance was no longer just fighting an alien force. They were fighting against the very people they trusted. Every step forward was a risk, but Halston was resolute. This betrayal wouldn't break them. It would fuel their fire. As the team prepared for their next mission, one thing was clear: there was no turning back now. They were the last hope for Earth's survival, and no amount of treachery would stop them from winning. The war had just begun. The Crimson Resolve had barely recovered from Leo's betrayal when a new, disturbing revelation changed the course of the war. The Mole had not only compromised their current position, but had also fed the Exotheri Empire critical intelligence about Earth's vulnerability. But amidst the turmoil, a new piece of information surfaced, one that could shift the balance of the war entirely. A whispered rumor from an intercepted Exotheri transmission spoke of an ancient weapon, hidden within the Empire's deepest stronghold, capable of turning entire planets into cinders. Captain Halston was hesitant at first. The Exotheri were known for their cruelty and deception, so could this weapon truly exist? Or was it another trap designed to lure humanity into the jaws of defeat? But the more he considered the implications, the more he realized that this was no ordinary rumor. The ancient weapon, buried within the heart of the Exotheri Empire, was Earth's only hope. It was their chance to strike back and win. "This weapon is our key," Halston said, his voice calm yet full of resolve. "We take it from them. We use it to destroy their fleet. If we don't, Earth falls. We don't have a choice." But retrieving the weapon was not going to be easy. The location was in the depths of Exotheri space, protected by a labyrinth of alien defenses. The Exotheri had hidden it on a desolate world, a place known only to a few high-ranking officials. If Earth's soldiers wanted to survive, they would have to venture into the very heart of the enemy's empire, infiltrate their fortress, and return with the weapon or die trying. The team, now more tightly bonded by their shared experiences and losses, prepared for the mission a lifetime. But even as they loaded their equipment and finalized their plans, doubt lingered. The Exotheri Empire was not known for leaving loose ends, and they had already proven how thoroughly they could destroy anything standing in their way. The Crimson Resolve knew that the fate of Earth depended on them, and if they failed, the human race would be wiped from the galaxy's history. As the fleet began its journey toward the weapon's location, the mood among the soldiers was somber but focused. The distance they would travel was vast, and no one knew what awaited them when they arrived. The mission would require more than just skill and bravery. It would require sacrifice. For some, this might be the last mission of their lives. Halston sat alone in the command room, looking out at the stars, his mind focused on the task ahead. He thought of his wife, Maria, and their young daughter. He had never told them about the Crimson Resolve, about the true danger the world faced. It was too dangerous, too uncertain. But now he knew he might never see them again. The thought haunted him, but there was no time to dwell. Earth needed him. Lieutenant Clark, the team's communications expert, interrupted his thoughts. "Captain, we've made contact with the alien network. There's something you should see." Halston followed Clark to the observation deck. A hologram flickered to life, showing a map of the desolate world where the weapon was rumored to be hidden. The map was ancient, its edges worn by time, but the coordinates were clear. However, what made Halston's stomach twist wasn't the location itself. It was the network of advanced Exotheri ships surrounding the area. They had fortified the world to a degree that was almost unthinkable. "They know we're coming," Halston muttered under his breath. "We're not the only ones looking for this weapon." Clark nodded. "And it looks like they've activated a defense grid around the planet. The moment we get close, they'll know we're here. This isn't just a fortress, Captain, it's a trap." Halston clenched his fists. The Exotheri had been expecting them. The moment they reached the planet, they would be outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. Yet, despite the overwhelming odds, Halston's resolve hardened. This wasn't just a battle for survival, it was a battle for Earth's future. They couldn't afford to fail. "We'll break through," he said, his voice steady. "We've faced worse odds before. We've got one shot at this, and we're taking it." Sergeant Vasquez stood beside him, her expression grim but determined. "We make our stand here, Captain. We fight for Earth." The rest of the team gathered, each of them steeling themselves for the mission ahead. They had survived against the impossible before, and they would do so again. The ancient weapon, the one thing that could turn the tide of war, was within reach. But the Exotheri would do everything in their power to keep it out of their hands. The Crimson Resolve set its course for the enemy's stronghold. There was no turning back now. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. Every step they took from here on out would bring them closer to either victory or oblivion. The stakes had never been higher. The ship plunged into the vast emptiness of space, heading directly into the jaws of the enemy. The journey to the Exotheri stronghold took days, but for Captain Halston and his team, it felt like years. The tension aboard the ship was palpable, and every creak of metal in the hull seemed to echo with the weight of the mission. Each member of the Crimson Resolve team, seasoned veterans who had fought through countless battles, was acutely aware of what lay ahead. They were about to venture into the heart of the Exotheri Empire, deep within enemy territory, to retrieve a weapon that could change the fate of their world. Despite the ever-present danger, Halston was resolute. The mission had to succeed. There was no room for failure, not after everything humanity had already sacrificed. "We'll be at the planet's orbit in 12 hours, Lieutenant Clark reported, his voice focused and calm as always. "The Exotheri's outer defenses are formidable, but we've got a few tricks up our sleeves. The real challenge will be infiltrating the planetary defense grid." Halston nodded. "We'll make it work. We've done the impossible before, and we'll do it again." The strategy was simple: slip past the outer defenses, make their way to the weapon, and destroy any Exotheri forces standing in their way. But nothing about this mission felt simple. Halston couldn't shake the feeling that the Exotheri were already expecting them. They knew humanity had a small resistance force left, and they had been targeting the remaining pockets of resistance across Earth. They had to know that this was Earth's final gambit, and they wouldn't let it succeed without a fight. "Prepare for atmospheric entry," Halston commanded. "Once we're inside, we need to stay low, move fast, and hit hard. No room for error." As the team geared up, Halston couldn't help but feel the weight of his leadership. Every decision he made, every step he took, could be the difference between life and death for his soldiers. They were all depending on him to lead them through this final, most dangerous mission. The atmosphere around the Exotheri world was thick with turbulence, but the ship managed to break through the storm, entering the planet's lower orbit undetected. Halston gave the signal, and the team moved swiftly into their drop pods. As the pods launched, the sheer speed and impact of the descent pressed them into their seats. Every second felt like an eternity as they hurtled toward the surface. When the pods finally crashed into the planet's surface, the team wasted no time in gathering their gear and preparing for combat. The terrain was harsh, rocky, barren, and scarred by the Exotheri's industrial footprint. The landscape was pocked with deep craters, remnants of past battles, and twisted alien structures that loomed like silent sentinels over the barren landscape. "Stay close and keep your eyes open," Halston ordered as they moved into formation. The air was thin, and the pressure to remain undetected weighed heavily on them. Every step was a gamble. If they were spotted now, the Exotheri would swarm them like locusts. Vasquez led the charge, her eyes scanning the horizon for any signs of movement. The mission was to infiltrate the heart of the stronghold, where the ancient weapon was said to be hidden. The coordinates were clear, but the Exotheri had placed numerous obstacles in their path, designed to keep intruders at bay. The team moved through the desolate landscape, dodging Exotheri patrols and taking cover in the shadows of alien architecture. It was unnerving how quiet the place was. This was no ordinary battlefield. The planet's defenses were silent, watching as though waiting for the Crimson resolve to make a misstep. Hours passed as they navigated the treacherous terrain, but finally, the team reached the Central Command Facility, a massive structure that stretched high into the sky, its surface covered with strange alien glyphs. This was it, the heart of the Exotheri stronghold. "We're in position," Clark whispered. "I'm accessing their security network now. It's heavily encrypted, but I can get us in." The seconds stretched on as Clark worked his way through the system, bypassing layers of firewalls and security codes. The tension was unbearable. Every moment they wasted brought them closer to being discovered. "Almost there," Clark muttered. Then, with a soft beep, the doors to the facility opened. They were in. The interior of the stronghold was nothing like the barren landscape outside. Inside, it was cold, metallic, and sterile, everything built with precision and efficiency. The walls hummed with the low-frequency energy of the Exotheri's power systems, and faint red lights flickered ominously in the distance. The team moved swiftly, navigating the corridors with practiced ease. The closer they got to the weapons location, the more guarded the facility became. The Exotheri knew this place was sacred to them. This was their last line of defense, the weapon they had kept hidden for millennia, an artifact of unimaginable power. As they neared the central chamber, the sound of footsteps echoed in the distance. Vasquez raised a hand, signaling for the team to stop. A group of Exotheri soldiers appeared down the hallway, walking toward them. Their heavy armor and elongated, predatory forms were unmistakable. Halston's heart raced, but there was no time to retreat. They had come too far. "We fight," Halston whispered. In a split second, the team sprang into action. Clark deployed a flashbang, blinding the Exotheri soldiers long enough for Vasquez and the others to engage. The battle was swift and brutal. Halston's team moved with deadly precision, using the element of surprise to their advantage. The soldiers fell quickly, but they knew more would be coming. "We've got to keep moving," Halston urged. "The weapons ahead. They couldn't stop now." The Exotheri were already hunting them down. The real fight was just beginning. The team pressed forward, moving with deadly efficiency through the winding corridors of the Exotheri stronghold. The sounds of combat echoed faintly behind them, but there was no time to dwell on the fallen enemies. Their mission was too critical, too urgent. Every moment they spent fighting only gave the Exotheri more time to react. Halston's mind raced as he calculated their next moves. The weapon was within reach, but it was hidden in the heart of a heavily fortified complex. The deeper they went, the greater the risk. As they turned a corner, they came upon a large, reinforced door. There were no guards nearby. Something was wrong. Halston signaled for the team to halt. "Clark," Halston said softly, his voice taut with tension. "Is this it? Can you crack it?" Clark nodded, his fingers already working over the alien keypad. "It's heavily encrypted, but yeah, this is the entrance to the central chamber. Whatever this weapon is, they're protecting it with everything they've got." Vasquez glanced over her shoulder, keeping watch. "How much time do we have?" "Not much," Clark said, his brow furrowing in concentration. "The more time we waste, the more likely they'll send reinforcements." The seconds dragged by like hours. Halston's pulse quickened as he glanced at the door, then back to his team. They had come so far, but something felt off. Every part of his instincts screamed that they were walking into a trap. Finally, the door slid open with a hiss, revealing a massive chamber bathed in dim alien light. The air inside was thick with a strange energy, and Halston felt a chill run down his spine as they stepped into the room. The central chamber was vast, its ceiling impossibly high. At the far end, a towering structure dominated the room, pulsing with an eerie blue light. This was it, the ancient weapon, or at least what the Exotheri had called their weapon. But as they approached, a sudden shift in the air made Halston stop in his tracks. It wasn't just the presence of the weapon that unsettled him. It was the feeling of being watched. "Wait," Vasquez said, her voice a warning. "Something's not right." Before anyone could react, the chamber's lights flared to life, blinding them for a moment. Halston raised his arm to shield his eyes, but it was too late. A series of shrill, mechanical sounds rang out from the weapon's core, followed by a deep rumble that shook the room. The structure before them began to move. The weapon was not a traditional armament. It wasn't a bomb or a beam cannon. No, it was something far more complex. A living entity. Its form shifted, parts of it rearranging themselves as if it were a massive biomechanical creature. Tentacles of energy lashed out from its center, wrapping around the walls like the fingers of some ancient god. "What in the hell?" Halston murmured, realizing that the weapon was more than just a tool, it was alive. "Captain," Clark shouted, his voice tinged with disbelief. "This isn't just a weapon. It's an entire biosystem, a weaponized organism." Vasquez raised her rifle, but Halston stopped her with a sharp gesture. "No, we don't attack until we understand what we're dealing with." The creature continued to writhe, its alien form stretching and contorting as if awakening from a long slumber. A low, guttural hum filled the chamber, and then, for the first time, they heard a voice that wasn't human, but carried a sense of overwhelming power and intelligence. "You should not have come." The voice vibrated in their bones, sending a shockwave through their very souls. Halston's heart raced. The words were simple, but the tone, cold, filled with ancient wisdom and deep disdain, sent chills down his spine. The weapon, or whatever this thing was, began to speak again. "You do not understand. You are too insignificant." Vasquez clenched her jaw, taking a step forward. "What is this thing? What is it capable of?" Halston's eyes narrowed as he pieced together the puzzle. The Exotheri had never mentioned this, never spoken of it in their intelligence reports. This wasn't just some weapon to destroy entire worlds. This creature could control minds, manipulate energy, and perhaps even manipulate time itself. The Exotheri hadn't built this. They had merely discovered it and kept it locked away for a reason. The weapon, or entity, shuddered, its form shifting again as if acknowledging their intrusion. "I am not your weapon. You do not control me." It was then that Halston realized the horrifying truth. The Exotheri had not been protecting a weapon. They had been protecting something much more dangerous. An ancient power, perhaps older than the galaxy itself, something that could rewrite the rules of warfare, reality, and even existence. The question was no longer how to activate the weapon. It was whether they could survive its awakening. "Get back," Halston barked. "We need to fall back and reassess. We don't know what this thing is capable of." But as the team turned to leave, the chamber rumbled once again, and the massive structure shifted toward them. The door they had entered through sealed shut, trapping them inside with the living weapon. Halston swallowed hard. They weren't just fighting for Earth anymore. They were fighting for survival against a force beyond their comprehension. The chamber trembled as the biosystem at the heart of the room seemed to come alive, its tentacles of energy pulsing with an otherworldly force. The walls seemed to warp as if reality itself were bending under the weight of this ancient sentient weapon. Halston's pulse raced as the creature's voice reverberated in his mind, a presence so overwhelming it nearly took his breath away. "You cannot escape," the entity murmured, its voice a chilling mix of disdain and amusement. "You are mine now." "Damn it," Halston hissed under his breath, backing away instinctively, his rifle raised. But there was nowhere to go. The massive structure had sealed the chamber, and the exits were now completely blocked. The air felt thick, oppressive, as if the very room itself was becoming an extension of the creature's will. "We're trapped," Vasquez shouted. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for any possible way out, but all she saw were the shifting walls of the structure and the countless tendrils extending from the central form of the creature. "Don't panic," Halston barked, keeping his voice steady. His mind raced. The entity was powerful, but it had to have weaknesses. Everything had weaknesses. They just needed to figure out what this thing was before it decided to make them its first victims. Clark, meanwhile, was struggling to work with the alien tech. "I've tried everything, Captain. The system is overriding my commands. It's like it's blocking me from hacking into its central control." Halston turned sharply to face him. "Can you stop it from taking over our minds?" Clark looked at him, clearly shaken. I don't know. This is unlike anything I've ever seen. I think it's trying to influence us. I can feel it, tugging at the back of my mind." He paused, trying to focus. "It's not just controlling the room. It's trying to control us." Halston's heart sank. The creature didn't just want to kill them, it wanted to enslave them. Their bodies, their minds, all would be subjugated to its will. "You will join me," the voice echoed again, this time clearer, as if it were speaking directly into their souls. "You will serve me, as the others have." The room seemed to grow colder. Halston felt his legs weaken, a dizzying pull in his mind as the creature's voice grew louder, more insistent. The air around them began to hum with energy, and Halston had to fight to remain focused. "No," he yelled, clenching his fists as he fought against the alien presence. He could feel the creature's thoughts slipping into his own, like tendrils of coldness winding around his mind. He shook his head violently, trying to force the alien influence out, but it was strong. Too strong. But just as Halston felt his resolve falter, a sharp voice broke through the fog. "Captain," it was Vasquez. "We're not alone." The doors behind them suddenly slammed open, and a squad of Exotheri soldiers poured into the room, weapons raised. Their eyes glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. The creature had fully ensnared them, and it was clear now the Exotheri had been its first victims, its initial servants. "Damn it," Clark muttered. "I knew they were waiting for us." Halston's mind raced, each moment feeling like it could be his last. The Exotheri soldiers, now puppets of the creature, advanced toward them without hesitation, their eyes vacant, expressionless, as if they were no longer in control of their own bodies. The creature was using them as pawns. "Focus," Halston snapped. "We fight back, now." Vasquez was already in motion, her rifle aimed at the nearest Exotheri soldier. She fired without hesitation, but the shots barely made a dent in the creature's control. It was clear that they were facing something far beyond the capabilities of standard weapons. "Clark, is there anything you can do?" Halston called, his voice strained as he ducked behind cover, narrowly avoiding a blast from one of the Exotheri soldiers. "I'm trying, Captain," Clark shouted back. "But it's like the creature's running on a completely different frequency. The tech isn't responding. It's blocking everything." Halston's mind spun as the creature's influence tightened around him. He could feel the weight of its presence bearing down, trying to infiltrate his thoughts, trying to make him part of its hive mind. The Exotheri soldiers were getting closer, but he couldn't let the creature, win. "Vasquez," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "We need to get to the core of this thing. It's the only way to stop it." Vasquez shot another soldier in the chest, but her expression was grim. "How do we do that, Captain? How do you fight something that controls everything?" Halston's mind clicked into place. The creature was not just controlling the soldiers, it was controlling the entire structure. If they could sever its control over the facility, they could stop the Exotheri soldiers and destroy the weapon. "I have an idea," Halston said, his voice low but steady. "Clark, do you have access to the core systems? The creature's controlling them, but we need to break its hold." Clark nodded, determination flashing in his eyes. "I'll do my best." The battle raged around them as Clark worked feverishly to breach the creature's control. Halston and Vasquez held the line, fending off wave after wave of Exotheri soldiers, their bodies beginning to falter under the strain. But then, just as the creature's grip tightened further, Clark's voice rang out. "I'm in." The creature recoiled, its form pulsing in fury as Clark's command began to override its systems. But it wasn't enough yet. The creature was still trying to retaliate, its power surging through the walls. "We need to finish this now," Halston shouted. "Clark, hit the main override. We need to shut it down completely." With a final defiant command, Clark unleashed a wave of feedback, and for a brief moment, the creature's influence wavered. The biosystem let out a terrible deafening scream, and the Exotheri soldiers froze, their eyes losing their glow. The chamber quaked as the creature's hold over the facility faltered. Clark's fingers flew across the console, sending commands deep into the weapon's core, his hacking overriding the creature's ability to control the Exotheri soldiers. The monstrous structure at the center of the room writhed and pulsed, the energy from its core trying to fight back against Clark's interference. The air crackled with a tangible tension, as though the entire facility was holding its breath, waiting for the final move. "We've got a window," Clark yelled, sweat dripping down his face as he desperately typed. "But it's not stable. The feedback is overwhelming. It's fighting back." Halston glanced around, his heart racing as he assessed their dwindling options. The Exotheri soldiers, momentarily stunned by the loss of control, began to stir, their eyes flickering back to their unnatural glow. They were no longer completely under the creature's sway, but they were still dangerous, and the creature itself, though struggling against the disruption, wasn't down for the count yet. "Vasquez, cover Clark," Halston barked. "I'll handle the soldiers." Vasquez didn't hesitate, instinctively shifting her aim to the Exotheri soldiers who were beginning to recover. Her rifle spat out bursts of fire, each shot a precise, devastating blow that dropped the nearest soldiers in their tracks. The battle was no longer about precision, it was about survival. Vasquez's shots rang out, each one creating a small barrier between them and the creature's agents. Halston gripped his rifle tightly, moving swiftly to intercept the Exotheri soldiers making a beeline for Clark. He could feel the adrenaline coursing through his veins, his mind clear despite the chaos around him. He fired, his shots finding their marks with deadly efficiency. The soldiers fell, their weapons clattering to the ground as they crumpled. But as the last of the soldiers fell, the room suddenly grew colder, and the creature's presence seemed to intensify. The walls around them began to glow with an eerie, pulsing light, and the very air seemed to vibrate with the force of the creature's anger. "Clark, how much longer?" Halston demanded, his voice tense. "I'm almost there, Captain," Clark responded, his voice strained. "Just need a few more seconds. I'm breaking through the last layer of security, but the creature's pushing back hard." The structure at the center of the chamber howled, and for a moment, the ground beneath them shifted violently, causing the team to stagger. The wall seemed to constrict, squeezing them in like a vice. The creature was desperate now, its control over the facility slipping, its power waning, but it was not going down without a fight. Vasquez spun around, taking down another Exotheri soldier who had appeared from an adjacent corridor. "We've got more incoming," she shouted, eyes narrowing. "They're sending reinforcements." "We don't have time for reinforcements," Halston shot back, knowing that every second counted. They were so close, too close to fail now. Almost there," Clark murmured through clenched teeth as he continued his work, sweat streaming down his face, his hands shaking. The feedback from the creature was relentless, trying to overload his system, but Clark was determined. He had to finish this, for Earth, for humanity. The creature's shriek pierced the air again, louder and more frantic, but Clark didn't waver. His final command cracked through the entity's defenses, and with a sharp burst of static, the core systems went silent. For a moment, everything seemed to stop. The glowing light in the room dimmed, the hum of the alien biosystem fading away. The oppressive atmosphere lightened, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from their shoulders. Clark fell back in his seat, gasping for breath. "It's done," Clark said, his voice hoarse. "We've cut its power. The creature's neutralized." But Halston knew they weren't out of the woods yet. The facility was collapsing around them, its once-controlled systems now in chaos. The walls cracked and groaned as the last vestiges of the creature's power began to unravel. They had won the battle, but the fight wasn't over. "Move out," Halston ordered. "We need to get to the ship now. The whole damn place is coming down." The team wasted no time. They sprinted down the hallway, Clark and Vasquez leading the way while Halston brought up the rear. The air was thick with dust and debris as the facility structure began to fall apart. The distant sound of explosions rang through the corridors, signaling the complete destruction of the Xatheri stronghold. As they made their way back to the drop zone, the ground trembled beneath their feet. The door that had sealed them in earlier gave way with a deafening crash, and they rushed through the opening, barely escaping the collapsing facility in time. Halston's eyes scanned the horizon as they sprinted toward the extraction point. The Xatheri forces outside had already begun to regroup, but they were too late. The creature was neutralized and the mission was a success. Humanity had taken another step toward victory. As they reached the ship, Clark let out a breath of relief. "We made it." Halston's gaze remained steady. "This isn't over yet. The Xatheri will retaliate, but today, we showed them that humanity will never surrender." The ship's engines hummed steadily as they ascended into the black expanse of space, the shattered remnants of the Xatheri stronghold growing smaller beneath them. The team was silent, each member lost in their thoughts as the weight of what they had accomplished began to settle in. Halston stared out the viewport, watching the burning wreckage of the alien facility. The mission was a success, but it had come at a cost. "Captain," Clark's voice broke the silence, his tone heavy. "We really did it, didn't we? We stopped it." Halston nodded, though his expression remained grim. "Yeah, we stopped it. But this war isn't over. This was just one victory. The Xatheri won't stop until they're sure they've wiped us out." Vasquez leaned back in her seat, wiping the sweat from her brow. "They'll be furious. We've hit them harder than they ever expected. The creature they were worshipping that was their last ace, we've crippled them." Halston exhaled sharply, his thoughts a tangled mess of strategies and potential outcomes. "We've damaged their infrastructure, but they're far from defeated. That creature, it wasn't just some weapon. It was a force of nature, and we've only just begun to understand its true power. If they manage to rebuild their strength, they could use something like that against us again." Clark frowned. "So what's next, Captain? We just go back to Earth and wait for their next move." Halston's gaze hardened as he turned to face his team. "No, we push forward. We show them that humanity won't bow down. We prepare. We hit them before they have a chance to recover. But this time, we'll be ready for whatever they throw at us." The silence that followed was heavy, but there was an unspoken understanding between them. Earth soldiers had proven themselves on the battlefield, but they knew that the coming months, maybe even years, would test their resolve more than ever before. The ship's sensors pinged, and the soft voice of the AI crackled over the intercom. "Captain, incoming transmission. It's Earth Command." Halston straightened, moving to the communications panel. The holographic projection of Admiral Harper appeared before him, her face etched with concern, but also a hint of pride. "Captain Halston," she began, her voice steady but serious, "we've received your report. You've done something we thought impossible. You've struck at the heart of the Xatheri war machine, but we're still facing overwhelming odds. Your victory won't go unnoticed, but it's only the beginning. Earth needs you to return immediately. We need to formulate our next steps." Halston exchanged a glance with his team. They had done what they could, but there was still much more to be done. "Understood, Admiral. We're on our way, but we're not going to sit back and wait for them to come at us again. We'll be ready." "Good," Harper replied. "We'll be waiting. Earth's defense is stronger now than ever before, but we'll need every last soldier to make sure the Xatheri know they can't break us." The transmission ended, and the room fell silent once again. The weight of their responsibility was palpable, but there was something else in the air now, a sense of purpose, of determination. Humanity had faced its darkest hour, and it had survived. Vasquez cracked a half-smile. Looks like the fight's just getting started. Halston turned back to face the view outside the ship, watching as the stars stretched out before them, infinite and full of promise. They had faced an unimaginable foe and had come out on top, but the war was far from over. The Exotheri were not just an enemy, they were a force, relentless and cunning, and humanity's fight for survival would continue. But as he stood there, surrounded by his team, soldiers, warriors, and survivors, Halston knew one thing: humanity would never surrender. Not now, not ever. They were the Crimson Resolve, and they had forged their place in the galaxy, proving that no matter how dark the universe got, they would fight to the last breath. Earth's soldiers had refused to bow down, and they would carry that defiance to the very ends of the stars. And so the battle continued, for Earth, for humanity, and for the future of the galaxy itself.